The other day, Trent Horn interviewed me on his podcast, The Council of Trent. It's going to be upcoming in September 2022. And by the way, just ignore if you hear any heavy breathing. That's my dogs. We just went for a walk. So I just want to get that out of the way. Maggie, come here. She's being really loud. That's when he's also being loud, and he's the crazy one because he's a puppy. So that's what you're hearing if you're hearing. Okay, it's not me. It's the dogs. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. So I was on Trent Horn's podcast, The Council of Trent, talking about abortion, and I wanted to talk a little bit about abortion here, coming out of that conversation. So Trent has a view, which I encourage you when the podcast comes out to listen to it. But his view is that from the moment of conception, when a new human organism is created at fertilization, that new human organism has the same ontological status. In other words, the same life. The life is of the same value at that moment, just post-conception, as at any subsequent moment in the life of the organism. So the embryo, the blastocyst that is created and exists in the first, about 5 days after the conception, is the same value as an infant, which is the same value as an adult, and so on. And that's interestingly, I pointed out to Trent that that's certainly a very unusual view. And one of the implications, of course, of that view then is that if you end the life of a blastocyst, let's say by taking the morning after pill and preventing the implantation of the blastocyst into the uterine wall, which results in the death of the blastocyst, then that is morally equivalent to killing an infant. All things being equal, to same immoral act of murder. Now, I pointed out to Trent that that is certainly not a common view. It's very much a minority view. I think it's about 20%, 15, 20, 22%, something like that, depending on the survey you look at, of the American population that would believe that. And I also pointed out that in a 2018 Gallup poll on abortion access to elective abortion, approximately 62% of people who responded said that they believed that there should be access to elective abortion in the first trimester. That dropped to about maybe 35, 40%, or maybe lower in the second trimester. And in the third trimester, it dropped down to like 13%. So 83% or 87% believe there should be no access to elective abortion in the third trimester, but 60-some% believe there should be in the first trimester. And what that shows, I think, clearly is that in the general population, there is a general sense, which I believe is informed by moral intuitions, a general sense that there, in fact, is some development ontologically in the worth or value of the human organism in utero. Now, at some point, I believe in utero, and I think these intuitions bear that out, at some point in utero, the human organism achieves a level of complexity and specification where it is now can be considered a full human person or human being, equivalent in moral status to anything subsequent. So any infant, toddler, young child, teenager, etc. But not before that. And just to illustrate that, I want to give you one illustration, a visual illustration. When I was actually talking to Trent, I was just glanced down and I saw a dog toy because, as you saw, I have a couple dogs running around. So I saw a dog toy on the ground and I picked it up because that dog toy actually looked quite like what a human blastocyst looks like. So here it is. This is a dog toy, but it can stand in for what a human blastocyst looks like about 5 to 6 days post-conception. So this is a human being in some of the earliest stages of life. It's kind of like an acorn to an oak tree. This is a blastocyst to an infant. And I would say most people, when they think about it, they think, okay, the blastocyst is not the same as an ovum. It's not the same as a spermatozoa. It is a unique, not just a living thing that is human, because a spermatozoa is a living human spermatozoa or a living human ovum, but they're not human people. They're not unified human organisms or human beings. But this is. And so, in that sense, this is far more valuable than sperm or an ovum or other non-human life forms, organisms, and so it should be protected. But I think it's also pretty clear to me that this is not the same equivalent value or status as an infant. And one way to illustrate this, which I pointed out to Trent in the podcast, that here's two scenarios. In the first scenario, a young woman has intercourse, and let's say there's a contraception failure, and she goes to her doctor the next day and gets the morning after pill. And he gives her the pill, knowing that the pill functions primarily to harden the endometrial wall and prevent the implantation of a fertilized embryo or blastocyst like this. And so she gets the, now my dog's spinning the food bowl, so just try to ignore that. Do you mind? So back to what I was saying. So the one lady, she prevents the implantation of a fertilized embryo, and because the doctor assigned the morning after pill. In the second scenario, a woman gives birth to a newborn infant, and she goes to her doctor because she doesn't want to take care of the infant, and so he euthanizes the infant with potassium chloride by injecting it into the infant's heart and killing the infant. Now, does it seem to you that taking the morning after pill to prevent the implantation of this embryo into the uterine wall is morally equivalent to injecting potassium chloride into the heart of an infant and killing the infant? I would submit that I have very strong moral intuitions that it's not. Now, that's not a drop down argument. You could provide arguments that could force a person to conclude that that is, in fact, the case. But it seems to me my intuitions that it is not are stronger than any counterfactual argument I've encountered, any rebuttal to those intuitions, which would argue that it is morally equivalent. So I am not persuaded that killing the human embryo or the human blastocyst is morally equivalent to killing a human infant. And that entails that there is some moral ontological development in the organism to a particular threshold point in utero, at which point that developing human organism now achieves full status. And that's why most people, 87%, don't believe in access to elective abortion in the third trimester. Now, to conclude, the last thing I just want to say about this is that Trent and I disagree on this. Yeah, clearly. But we're both Christians. We're both thoughtful Christians. I think I'm a thoughtful Christian. I know Trent definitely is. And this is just a reminder to me that your view on abortion, or a particular view on abortion, is not in the Apostles' Creed. In other words, it's not considered essential for Christian identity. So there should be Christian freedom. We should recognize that Christians can reasonably disagree about something like the ethics of abortion and legislative policy regulating abortion in society based upon our moral beliefs and our understanding of a good society. We can disagree on what that looks like, and we can all still be disciples of King Jesus.